more than that, actually. Hugh Massey taught me this. This is a very tiny break-off from his body of work called Financial DNA. And back in the early 2000s, anyway, you don't need to hear the whole story. I don't want to take your time with that. I love telling stories. I'm Irish. That's kind of how I'm wired. So I'll spare you some of that. The communication preference tool is one of the first tools that we have in our core training because it is so fundamental. Now, you may or may not want to do this way, the way I'm going to show you with the settlement client. Let Traci give you some guidance on this. I'm going to show you how we use this in more of a financial planning setting. What we want to know is we want to know the client's communication style, right? I mean, all the research says what's most important to clients of financial planners. It's communication and trust are right up there at the top. And investment return is usually pretty much below the halfway mark. There's a lot of other stuff that people are concerned about, but communication. And I don't mean snail mail, email, phone, like that. You still need to know that because that's operational. But this is internal. If you ask someone off the top, so tell me, how can I best prepare you for meetings? What do you like in a meeting? And how should we follow up meetings? People may have a couple words. Mostly they say, I wish I really knew. I don't know. It doesn't, whatever. And usually you're asking a client to adhere to the way you like to work with clients. You've seen enough success with that. There's no reason to change it. And so you just kind of do what you do. What we found is if you step away from that and you actually ask the client to take some time, look at a list like this, and have them identify 2 or 3 things that would be really important for someone to know about them in a professional setting. What would really work for them? The relevance of that, because you always have to have relevance, it's not just you're ticking off. We do this for everybody, just take 5 minutes, go and leave it. This is a big deal. The relevance for that is you're letting someone take time to think and explore. Most people know, but they don't know how to articulate it. You're letting them have some time, and then you're asking them about what does that look like? What does that mean? If I got that right, how would that be? So you're actually co-creating with the client how you're going to design your engagement with them, how you're going to prepare them, how you're going to be in a meeting, and how you're going to follow up. 100% of the time, and remember this is over 20 years, I have never once heard, and we ask this once in a while, so we do check in on this, what do your clients say? Have any of your clients ever had this kind of an exercise before where someone asked them about their communication? 100% is no. No one has ever asked that. Now, sometimes they ask you to fill out something. There's some psychographic that says, oh, you're a this or you're a that, and when you're a this, then we do that, and this is how we'll do it. That's somebody else's stuff that's telling another individual who they are. It's so much more powerful for someone to be able to articulate who they are, what's important to them, and why, and be heard and have the follow-through. This is an amazing exercise. So I want you to have this experience because we'll have some take-home materials for you at the end of the day. So you'll have this list that we have up here. But for now, can you see this in the back of the room? Can you read this? Okay, good. So what I'd like you to do, excuse me, I'd like you to take, and I'm going to time this, I'd like you to take, we'll start with 2 minutes, for you to look at this list and write down on a pad of paper, you all have pen and paper in front of you, 2 or 3 things, it doesn't have to be 3, but at least 2 that are really important. If somebody else knew that about you and accommodated that, it would make a difference. So do that. And just see what comes up for you. And I'll be quiet, and I'm going to time you, give you 2 minutes for that. What I invite you to do is partner up again. And this time, one person take the role of an advisor or a planner, and the other one take the role that you're the client and you're explaining to the planner what's important to you. This is what I'd like you to know about me. And I'm going to time it again, take a few minutes. I mean, instead of just saying, this is important, I'd hate you if you didn't do this or something like that. Like really imagine that you're working with a professional and you want them to know your style. The advisor's job is to be quiet and listen, not a word. Just listen. And then we'll switch roles, okay? So choose your partner. Okay, tie it up. 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Okay, come back to me, please. Come back to me, please. Hello, come back to me, please. This is what happens when people like each other. It's a good thing, but come on back. Hello. My husband does this big whistle, and I wish I had the whistle. Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay, how'd that feel? This is only half of it. You're going to switch roles in a minute.
Absolutely.
Oh, you did both? You did both? Okay, with them.
Right?
Oh, I bet you will.
Did you guys do that?
I bet you will. Okay, that's good enough, though. So let's think about this. How did it feel to identify? Was it easy to identify what was important? Yeah. So whatever was important to you kind of had a word that connected you to that? Yes.
Sorry.
You're just more complicated.
That's because at the end of every sentence, Jeremy's putting big text on it.
And sometimes people do say, I want everything. Why would I not want everything on the list? And that's a whole different conversation. So you're trying to narrow it down. If I got 2 or 3 things absolutely right for you, what would that be? So it's not unusual that someone says all, but you want to narrow it down. So when you're thinking about this and you're listening, what did it feel like to listen? Could you actually listen without talking? Really? Yeah? Good, good. Did you want to say something? Because, you want to interact with people. Listening like that, we call it deep listening, it's hard, yeah.
So, yes, listen, but like for 15 or 20 seconds, and then once the 2 or 3 items were out, then it's clarifying questions back and forth. So how long do you have to listen?
That's a good question.
I have an
That's a
answer.
very good question. So what you want is they've picked it out, and they tell you which ones. Then you say, tell me about that. What would it look like if I got that right? And then you have that conversation. And you might say, tell me a little bit more. I'm not really clear. Do you mean this or that? Let them tell you rather than you tell them what they're trying to say. That's a very easy trap to fall into because you've been here before, you've heard it before. So let them use their words and then go to the next one. What we do in the financial planning setting is we would end this by saying, let's go over what we just talked about, and so I can put it in the notes. So each time someone from my team connects with you, they know what's important. So you have it in your file. So anytime someone pulls up that name of that client, there should be a space in your CRM that says what it is. For instance, did you see that there was something, give me options? Did anybody choose that yourself? Give me options? It's not, oh, you did? Okay. What happens is sometimes people get really irritated if they don't have options. Down to the point, and I'm always surprised with this, down to the point, if someone calls up the client and says, she can see you on Friday at such and such a time, does that work for you? They feel disrespected. They want to be given choices. They want to be given options. So when someone says, give me options, you want to know what they mean. What did you mean by options? Did you?
I was thinking more on financial advice, and I really strongly appreciate that being given options with a recommendation.
With
I really want that, but I don't want just the recommendation. I want a recommendation and alternatives, and then I'll be asking why the difference, why the
perfect. So that's like the dream part of it. Because it's pretty easy to say, you could do 1, 2, 3, maybe bullet points, name it, whatever, and I recommend this. There are actually preferences that get even more subtle than that. Some people want to know the recommendation and then tell me what else you thought about. So it's another way of doing it. So it sounds picky, right? It's not. If you can get that right for that kind of person, it just makes it so much easier to have a discussion and to lay out the possibilities and bring them to a point where they can implement and they can make a choice.
on that is personal preference, I'll say. I think when I'm working with clients, I'm really looking for personal preference. distraction. It's not about whether I dislike an option. I'm just wondering. I have a question in the back of my mind, and it distracts me from whatever they are saying right now.
So you see how helpful that would be if you extended the conversation enough to understand that there's actually a distraction going on if you're going down all of the options. And that's what you don't want. That's a waste of brain capacity. That just takes you a little bit off the track. So the note would be the options, starting with recommendations. And what we might explore is then, so next time I'm preparing for a meeting, how about if I list a recommendation and then I have the bullet points of what I have thought about, all the other options, so we can look at it and have a discussion. Would that help?
Absolutely, especially if it's referenced right at the beginning, for 20,
Thank
20
you.
or 30 seconds, because then whatever else you're going to talk about, you'll have my full attention. Because I'm not wondering, for me, when I'm working with clients, I'm really interested in focusing on the idea of avoiding the overwhelm. For me, I'm often focused on avoiding the distraction. That's usually how I think about it.
Yeah. So then what you'd do is you'd put it into your CRM, maybe a little template of that, or just a little outline. In preparation, agenda preparation for this meeting, do it this way. So everybody on your team can wash and repeat. You don't have to think about it. And the client, how does it feel if I'm doing that and I have that in my how does that feel to you?
I'm focused, and I also recognize that you are considering my interests as your plan, which means you're probably considering other interests of mine that I'm not necessarily thinking about.
So are we kind of in alignment? Yeah, trust and alignment. It's a key thing, and it's a simple tool. We spend, the first 2-month module we're on this and one other tool. So it isn't something that's always compressed into the few minutes here. But I thought I'd give you at least a taste of it and maybe have some recognition yourself to take home. Yeah, this is important to me. Do we have a Slido now? I think. This is a fun thing. We're just learning how to do this. This is a way to get feedback.
iPhones, take out your iPhones. You get to do it.
Hear my who would like how do you want to go first, and you can kind of quickly understand if you're working with someone who feels more comfortable listening or feels more comfortable talking, and you can kind of modulate what you will be for them in that instance, so
Fair enough. It's to have a real human conversation about it. It isn't just to check the box and move on. Thank you for that.
The QR code is also in your materials, should be stored in the materials as well if you can't pull it up here.
This is a new fun thing to do when you're with a group to get consensus. It's called Slido, and you'll see it come up in just a minute.
Is anyone when you pull up the QR code, are you given a poll? Do you see a poll?
What we just did is called in your client's shoes. That's the communication. Was it helpful, not helpful? Did you discover something new about yourself? Good. Well, personally, I liked 100% better than 96%, but I'll take it. I'll take it. Thank you. Do you think this is something that you would be willing to try? I would recommend that you try it with someone who is on your team or maybe your spouse, just to get a feel for talking about it. And then figure out, as you had said, the way that you might help understand what somebody is saying. Let them talk, and then you're processing. And then what we do is together, we call it co-creating with a client. Together, we write down what would be in the CRM about them, about their communication. So they know that you know, and everybody on your team knows. The other thing that's really important is follow what you write down. If you do this and you have this powerful conversation, and then you just blow it off and do everything the way you've always done it, that doesn't work really well. That kind of gives you a bit of a this. And the other thing is, the next time you meet with that client, say, I'm trying to follow what we talked about. How am I doing? Is there anything different? Sometimes on the spot, people think of it one way. They go home and they say, gee, I wish, or I really didn't mean that. Give them a chance to refine it. Also, we put it into their annual meeting to say, how are we doing with this? Has anything changed? You know that your clients, as they age, might lose some hearing. So they might be doing a lot of this, but they're not listening. Or their stress level is now down and they want a faster meeting, a faster pace. So just check in with them once a year.
So
Next.
mine is easier for me because I'm graphics and verbal communications. And so it's one of the things that it's interesting. I'll just throw it out there, even with the life companies. If you're trying to tell me something, now Bob Lee's not here, but you can tell Bob Lee I said that. He's like, why are you not selling more GSS? And I'm like, because I can't read it in one page. I'm like, if you can't give me a presentation, you can't give me an illustration on one page, and I see what's happening, I don't want to deal with it. I did know it enough to know, and there's other reasons. But once they changed the software and they changed it, now there's a great presentation. I'm like, oh, I like that. So it's just even with the life companies and people that you communicate with, I kind of push different vendors that I work with to create one-pagers, not just because that works for me, but it works for the clients that we're giving the information to. So if you are bringing in other products this is just kind of a note today, it's like, don't hesitate. If you can't read it in a one page, your client probably can't read it in a one page either. So with everything that Susan just said, it's actually also a fantasy to be able to have 25-minute conversation about communication, right? And so it's something that what I have learned is to take that communication preference tool. It's rare that I can ever actually give it to the client. We just don't have the time to go through it. If you are physically in person with the client, I do put it in the packet. I do bring it out and just say, this is, a communication at some other point. So if it happens to be a client that you're going to potentially work with on, investments later, then you say that this is, you set the expectation that I'm not missing this today. But I just wanted you to know we really want to understand your communications. And it's something that you can do later, but generally I don't have. So back to your question, how long can the meeting be? If I used communication preferences and actually went through that exercise with the clients, I'd lose 20 minutes. And so that doesn't work there, but I do use it. One of the things, if you're working on a Zoom, that I will do is sometimes I will send the communication preferences via a DocuSign, because on a DocuSign they can click it, because getting them to email it to them and print it out and fill it out and scan and send it back, it doesn't really work. But sometimes if you're not meeting them in person, putting it on a DocuSign, just because then they can click on it, and that just helps you a lot for the file too, and doesn't really take long. So if you're referencing it anywhere, you can bring it out later. I kind of did this slide, and I should have probably done this one the most. I probably used this the most, is how I use communication preferences is in my brain. It's not something you learn overnight, but over time, as I know that they're not going to be able to handle it. So when I'm having a meeting with a client, I let them know, especially if I'm on a Zoom, it's easier to say, I'm going to give you information 3 different ways. And I said, so I acknowledge that that we're not going to have time to go through everything. And I just let them know, some people want to have a conversation like we're having on this Zoom right now. The second way is people like to read and research the information. So expectations. This is why after this Zoom is over, I'm going to send you an email with information. I do not want you to feel overwhelmed with the information. I want you to be able to pick and choose the information that you're interested in reviewing. There is a link to a book, and again, any of you guys can use it. I have no problem sending it to you. If you would like to, if you're a reader, and some of them are like, yeah, I'm a reader. I like to read. I will read it. It's maybe 2 hours front to back. Or I say, if you only have 15 minutes, read chapters 8 and 9. So I streamline it. I said, when you get the information, I said, you can look at it. Then I'm going to send you a follow-up email with a summary of kind of what's happening in that. Eventually we'll get into one-pagers a little bit later. Then I'll send a summary. So that there's a follow-up email that actually is more streamlined with the actual visuals. The visual will be a 1-pager, which was, I heard you, here's the information, and then also some potential options and such too. I do not send the same email with all the information of what you could know about settlement planning and what your options are and such in there. It's usually just the only attachments is a link. There's a link to the book. There's what's called a financial health checklist, which is just, do you have your living trust done? Do you have an umbrella policy? Do you have, what are your 401ks and such like that? So I will just attach, and then of course the structured settlement brochures are also included there. So I will highlight in that email. I try to keep it as much to the point as I possibly can in that email. And it's a template email. You tweak it per the person, but it's not like it's a long email. It's a template that you've created because you have process and procedures, and it's relatively the same. Obviously, today's conversation is not about special needs trusts and such, because that's a second layer, adding in trusts and stuff. So I'm just the basic client. So sending that email kind of immediately after, because it's fresh on their mind, it's a little fresher. Then you're going to follow up whether your office can do proposals and options same day or the next morning. I try to get it out as quick as possible. That really helps the client through. But so in the back of my mind, I am using visuals. When I'm having a meeting with them, whether it's in person or on Zoom, I've brought that handout that you have. Sometimes I generally leave it with them. And so we have that, and then you're usually nodding, not like the Indians, but they're nodding. Yes, that feels, and then they're seeing that. I'm leaving those visuals and or showing those on my Zoom. I show what's called a financial health checklist. Again, we have a path, there is a plan, and that creates calmness. And you guys have all done that, I'm sure. It creates calmness. There is a plan. And then I actually use my garage analogy a lot. I say to them, I said, today I know that this is going to be short. I'm going to try to keep it as not as overwhelming as it might and could be. I said, my analogy is like the garage. Nobody wants to walk out to the garage. And I said, some of my clients have super neat, and actually I was working with an engineer last week, and I said, I bet your garage is already nice and neat. And he's like, yeah, pretty much. And so, but I said, but the majority of people have a very, very messy garage. So my goal today, as I said, in order to finalize an option that you have available at the time of settlement, we have to kind of move quickly. Because I strongly believe that relationships only don't work out from no communication, miscommunication, or wrong expectations. So every time I'm working with a client, I really set expectations. This meeting is going to be, we're going to kind of clean out the garage. We're going to touch and talk on a lot of things, but there's really only one thing that we're going to decide here shortly. So even though I need to help you figure out what that is, let's pull everything out. So this exercise or this call or this meeting is, I'm going to pull everything out of the garage, and then we're going to work together to sort between whether we sell it, keep it, or toss it. And then we're going to put it back nice and neat into the garage. I said, so do you mind? I ask for permission a lot through that. Do you mind if I ask you questions? And then I get everything. I get everything from anything and everything. And so that's how I keep the meetings relatively. On a Zoom, I can usually do it in 50 minutes to an hour and 10. And in person, it's usually is because I'm setting expectations. I'm letting them know communication preferences in my mind. I'm letting you know that I'm not ignoring your communication style at all. It's just, unfortunately, we're under a timeline. And so I want to come back to it. So as you get to know them, you can obviously adjust per each one. So I use all kinds of things. I ask for the permissions. I ask for so that they're giving me permission to do things. I'll use DocuSign if I can use a communication preference. I follow up with the information on the visuals in usually two different emails, unless it's a very, very simple case. Then I'll go ahead and attach the options on the structured settlement. And then I give them the expectations of what's next and that I haven't forgot you. So if I was working with a Jeremy who was really communicating with me, I'd be like, I haven't forgotten that I'm going to get you more information, so I just want them to acknowledge that. So that's just a way that I use it. But so don't walk away from the first time that it only took me like 3 years to figure out how I can't use that exactly the way that she wants to use it, because I was like, I just can't do this. And people weren't connecting, and it was spending a little bit more time than what we had. And so I had to create a different way. And so I know the communication preferences. So I'm watching for the signs as I'm working with the clients, and you can quickly pick it up. I think all of you can pick it up. And I just wanted to, again, touch on the attorneys, because you absolutely will get attorneys like, what are you doing? And so I wouldn't say that you can train them, because you can't train an attorney. You really just can't. But you get them used to, how your process is. And some of them, you're just not going to go there. Or you're like, you know what, let me talk to the client and I'll get back to you. How about I make life easier? So, and sometimes I've personally just gotten to the point in my career that I'm like, if you just don't care, I don't really care to work with you anyway. So that's a personal choice for you.